Welcome back to the Simply Successful podcast. Today, I want to talk with you and my guest about why most men are actually pretty good in performing in their business, but not as good as stewarding their own health, and why just doing more of what you do right now maybe isn't leading you to a successful health and the warrior's physique you desire. We're going to discover all of that, what your genetic blueprint has to do with your optimal peak performance. And I have on board with me today Dr. Jake Huebner, who is an expert in genetic testing and metabolic peak performance. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since we were talking about actual health topics and performance topics, but today I'm very happy to have Dr. Jake Huebner with me. And it is funny because it's finally a name that I can pronounce because it is a German name, so I don't have any trouble with that. So you probably can expect a lot of nerdiness because I'm 100% German. Jake is 50% German, but we try to keep it easy on you today. But without further ado, Jake, you have the word. Just introduce yourself so
Yeah,
people know who you are.
awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. So, yeah, I'm Dr. Jake Huebner. I own a muscle and joint clinic here in Colorado, and then I run Spartic Health, which is more of an online platform, but we do some in-person stuff as well. So I'm a chiropractor, but I have a passion for blood work, genetic testing, kind of all things health related and fitness related. I've been into bodybuilding and powerlifting for about 15 years now, so it's been a huge part and staple in my life of just developing discipline and character over the years and using that and how it applies to not only my faith and putting effort and time into that and the results you yield from that. But yeah, so I just want to help men and women. I work primarily with men. I just really want to help them understand truly what they're capable of, not only physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well. And I really do feel like a lot of times you can start with the physical stuff for a lot of men, knowing, understanding how their body works, how it functions, but also knowing that, hey, it takes time and discipline over many years to get not only the way you want to look or feel. So that's who I am. That's what I'm passionate about. And that's what I'm going to just keep pursuing until the Lord leads me somewhere else.
That is awesome. I love that. And before we dive deeper into my favorite topics, health and faith, how did you come up with that? I mean, like you have a background in powerlifting, right? And you're you're a chiro, and like you're doing physical therapy on people. And so how did that holistic approach came to you? Like you just woke up one day, or the Lord sending you an angel and say like, oh, that's what you're gonna do now? Or how did you like develop the whole idea of, okay, there is certain limitations to what I can do or how I can serve with what I do right now, and that's why you developed the more holistic approach?
Yeah, I think like I do again, I love chiropractic that has major limitations and there's some major stigmas about chiropractors out there. Not all of them are great. And so I kind of just wanted to ignore that noise and focus more on okay, how with the skills that I have and what I've learned, how can I best help somebody based on also evidence and research that's been done. And so I never really followed the traditional chiropractic route. I've always been more into the rehabilitation side of things. So appointment times are a little longer. We're actually doing strength training, we're doing mobility stuff, we're kind of doing all the combination of things. So I knew that even going into chiropractic school that I wanted to do a more hands-on approach that way. So I was kind of in between physical therapy and chiropractic. I just went to the chiropractic route for a few different reasons. And then as I was kind of going through school and going through the program, it kind of morphed into wow, there's a whole like blood work and functional medicine side of things that a couple people who were in classes above me were doing. And that really interests me. And I was like, wow, that's really fascinating. And so I got really into the blood work stuff, got really interested in chiropractic school, and then really got into it over the last 4 or 5 years after starting my practice here in Colorado. Yeah. So I think that's kind of just morphed into, it was kind of just this, not really this big aha moment until kind of more recently, but kind of this more, okay, what am I passionate about? Okay, I'm passionate about fitness. I'm passionate about helping people and serving people. And I'm also passionate about learning about the human body and blood work, genetics. So how can I mix all the things that I'm passionate about into one thing? And that's kind of how cardio, muscle, and joint was more of the chiropractic stuff, and Spartic Health kind of just combines all that stuff. So that's why I went more with the Spartic Health route. to kind of rebrand Colorado Muscle and Joint and create a one-stop shop for people's health. So again, not like an aha moment, Jesus, coming down saying this is what you're going to do. It was more just kind of following his lead and just kind of following those steps over the years, and it led me to this. So and now I just really feel like I'm where God wants me to be, and I'm following in this and kind of his steps that he's planned for me. So
Yeah, I love that, and I can totally relate to it. I think it's important that we share that there is purposes where there is like a gradual evolution, right? And he leads you one step at a time, and he unravels, one step at a time, or one wisdom after another. Because if I think about my journey, and I would think about that miraculous moment or that so-called overnight success, I wouldn't be able in any capacity, way, or form to handle everything I know now and I do now.
yeah,
So, but I think it's kind of encouraging, especially for people out there that maybe think, oh, am I on the right track? Maybe sometimes the way is stagnant. Sometimes you feel like you're circle around things, or you don't really evolve to the next level. So I really like that you shared, just like, set one foot in front of the other,
mhm,
and just like, go but day by day and see where he leads you. Because
yeah,
I think, yeah, we're all reading the Bible and we know all the miracles and overnight, or instant healings, instant miracles, this and that.
yeah,
And I think a lot of us just sitting there and saying like, oh, where's my miracle? Where's this? Or even like, appearances of angels. And then like there was this big vision telling, like, the Lord's telling you that that's your route. And it wasn't like that for me at all. It was the same. Like, I started after my professional sports career. I only knew I wanted to help people get healthier and better. And it just developed over time. And the interesting fact is, the deeper I dove into actual science and quantum
yeah,
physics and whatnot, because I was just not satisfied with the answers like my teachers or university had, because I was like, yeah, okay, but we're just treating symptoms here. Like, it's
yeah,
not working. Like, we're having the people like in the system forever, and no one's really getting well. So like, this wasn't right for me. So I was just like digging and digging and digging. And I ended it up with the Lord. So kind of like what you do, right? Like blending all the signs together with faith and scripture, and realizing that there you are at the origin of everything. And if you really want to find a blueprint, or if you really want to understand what works and what not, you go back to the Lord and you go back to scripture and you find out. So
absolutely.
that's kind of similar route, and I really love that.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, and we know that in the Bible it says, right, like, your body is like the temple of the Holy Spirit, and for us Christians, it's important to steward the body well. So you said like you developed that whole blueprint, or that blueprint over genetic testing and blood work. Can you just like explain us a little bit more about what you measure, like what genetics actually reveals about our
mhm,
God-given design, and how it can help us to uncover
yeah.
what really works?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love that. Yeah, 'cause I love explaining it to people. Yeah, so blood work is I always kind of say it like this. Blood work's kind of a snapshot of what's going on right now. Genetics is kind of this broad spectrum view of the human body and you personally of what's going on. So genetics really help us uncover things. I use 3x4 Genetics is the company that I use, and I love partnering with them. They're just amazing, and it's been the most comprehensive genetic testing that I've ever seen, and so that's why I used it. So we look at like 36 metabolic pathways spread across 6 health categories. So, they cover pretty much everything from vascular health to memory and brain health, nutrition, recovery, sleep, pretty much everything. And so we look at about 170 plus genes. So we can really dive into each gene and say, hey, you might have a predisposition to X, Y, and Z. So here's how we solve that with X, Y, and Z. So that's what I love about the genetic testing is everybody's so different. You can find some similarities between people, but the results I get back are almost always pretty vastly different from one, which makes it really interesting and fun for me because it's just fascinating, but also it's really good for the people who are looking at it because they really start to understand their bodies and how things are working together. And a lot of times you do the genetic testing, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense why I feel this way because of
Mhm.
gene or how these two genes are interacting with one another. So it really gives us a really clear picture and a really good overview of why maybe some people are feeling a certain way, or why they respond to exercise this way or respond to a certain diet this way. Nice thing about genes, the genetics we're looking at, is there a lot of them are epigenetics. So they're genetics that we're able to turn off and on. So obviously your eye color, your hair color, obviously you can change your hair color, but not at the root level. So, but a
Dang.
lot of times, yeah, a lot of times those are like genetics that you can't really change, versus epigenetics are typically genetics that we can turn off and on. And so that process is usually done by something called methylation, which is helps turn off and on genes, helps repair damaged DNA. I know methylation is kind of a buzzword right now too. So all of that stuff we can find out with genetic testing that we do. And in combination with the blood work, it just helps us give a clear picture of, yeah, your genetics say that you might be predisposed to this. And yeah, your blood work is showing that too. Versus sometimes we say, hey, your genetics are showing that you might be predisposed to this, but your blood work is showing that you're
Mhm.
staving that off, or you're doing a good job, or whatever it may be. So it's not always like this death sentence, in genetics. It's just more what you're predisposed to.
Yeah, okay. And I find that like super groundbreaking and super interesting because it's going to relieve a lot of people from their frustration. I like just my assumption, probably what's out there works pretty well for men because man has just like a 24-hour hormonal cycle and no big mood swings. And he's kind of like a bit working like a machine.
Yeah.
I oftentimes feel like it's way easier for men to find, just by try and error, to find their workout routine and what works well with, their eating habits or their diet. Women is a whole nother universe.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating when you really like try everything out there. Like one of the big reasons why people get frustrated is because you have a million different streams. One year it's you go that route and you go keto and you go like high intensity,
Yeah.
and the other summer everyone is doing, I don't know, Peloton, or everyone's doing CrossFit or whatnot, and I see so many people just really getting frustrated because they try to hop on every stream, and being so hopeful that finally this time this
Mm.
is something that works for me. And I feel from what I've learned now is that if you really can look at your genetic blueprint, because we read it in the Bible, like God made us all unique. So by design, there can be a cookie cutter program, or it
Yeah.
can't be a one fits all kind of approach. So I really like that. And I think you're gonna relieve a lot of people just saying, yeah, okay, like this is actually your blueprint, and now we can identify what works, and I can actually help you steward your body. I can actually, give you the tools and the right things to do in order to achieve your goal, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think hardest part about that is people actually then doing something about it, because it's like it's easy. Oh, sweet, And I think what happens a lot of times with fitness is people jump around so much because they're expecting, hey, in 2 or 3 months this should change my life, and it's like, well, no, it's I've been doing this for 15 years and I'm still learning stuff. When it comes to whether it's bodybuilding or just lifting weights in general or nutrition. So you have to kind of look at it as like you're doing this for the long game. You're not doing this for a quick fix, and that's the hardest thing about when I have conversations with people who are thinking about, working with me is, so this is just going to solve all my problems, right? And like, and I've literally had people ask me that. I'm like, well, no, I mean, it'll give us really good insight. There's still a lot of work to be done on your end and my end, but a lot of work to be done on your end of, you have to be disciplined. You have to follow the plan I give you. And if you follow it exactly, I mean, you'll get the results that you want, but it's not always as easy as people, you know, think it's going to be in terms of just the discipline that's involved with achieving those goals. So any goal that's worth having, it takes time and effort and a lot of sacrifice to achieve. And so you just got to ask yourself, okay, do I really want to reach that goal, or or do I want this to be really quick, or how much time do I want to put into this? And if you're really honest with yourself, then you can usually come across of like, yep, I do want this. I'm going to sacrifice X, Y, and Z to get to this result. Or yeah, I don't know if I want it bad enough yet. And eventually you'll reach a point where you're so miserable that you will want it bad enough and you can't really afford not to make a change. So
Yeah.
I've had people who want to work with me, and then 2 years later they actually decide to, because they're miserable enough, unfortunately. So yeah, that's always a hard conversation to have.
I can totally relate. But at the other point, it's I think it's a really good part to see that sometimes like every conversation you have, you plant a seed. But you know, not everyone has a prepared soil, so to say. So and sometimes, you know, it just takes time to like for the Lord and the circumstances prepare that person to be actually ready. And I had that too. Even sometimes like 5 or 10 years later, people like accidentally like meet up with me or we run into each other grocery shopping or whatnot when I was in my hometown, and they were like, oh, actually I wanted to say thank you. And I was like, okay, that's nice, but for what? And it was like, oh, you remember like that one seminar and like 10 years ago, 5 years ago about stress and mindset and focus and you know, and it didn't done anything for me for a couple years, but now I finally realized it, and now I changed this up, and I changed this up, and
Mm,
I'm so good, and
yeah,
that's just like the moments where my heart light up, and maybe it's another thing about like we're so used to instant gratification those days. Everything you know has to be quick and quick results and right
yeah,
now, and it is good, I think, especially with having a faith-based approach to be humble and train yourself to be patient. So
yeah,
I really like that you blend those two together. Because for me, I feel like it's kind of like spiritual warfare as well.
yeah.
If I'm like being lazy, you know, if like the devil wins on my shoulder saying, ah, you know, let's start tomorrow, or
Mm,
oh, it's not that bad actually, you know, and then on the other hand, like it's your righteous heart telling you, hey, come on, like, you know, this body is bought with a price. And,
yeah,
you know, that is like you don't have much to do here on earth, but like, you know, steward it well. And so it's kind of like that internal battle. How do you like blend that into your work? Because I can imagine that every client is a Christian.
most aren't. Not to say I would say most aren't. I've just the ones that I've worked with probably, it's like a mix. It's just a mix. Some are, and it's awesome. Some are not. But yeah, I mean, they most of my clients that work with me eventually, they find out pretty quick that I'm a believer. Not because I'm just like, oh, just so you know, I'm a Christian. I don't really do that. But
Like you're right
hopefully,
in your face.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, by the way I'm acting and talking, they can sense the difference there. Or I'll bring it up. I'll like, hey, yeah, we go to this church or whatever, however it comes up. Yeah, I'm definitely like I'm there to plant seeds, and God's there, to water it. And like what you said, I think that's such a good example of, there's the parable of, seed that's thrown into good soil, into the
Mhm.
thorns, onto the gravel. And so if people are ready to receive it, I mean, it won't take much watering of the Lord to see that fruit come from it. But if people are not, or they have distractions, or their heart is hard, then it may take a couple times for that soil to become good soil, or to get rid of the weeds or thorns or whatever it may be. So I just try to really listen to the Lord, and have Him help guide me in those conversations with people, and not shoving it down
Mhm.
people's throats, but also knowing that my mission here on earth is to make disciples, and doing however that however that works into my business. Obviously, that's the most important thing in my business is I honor the Lord with my practice and what I do. So yeah, I don't really have like a system of how I do that or anything. I just kind of let it flow naturally, and comes about awesome. But if I can plant seeds, then that's all I'm called to do, is just plant those seeds and have conversations with
Mhm.
people, and give a defense for my faith of why I believe what I believe. And if I'm covering all those bases and I'm honoring God in that, then that's all I can do.
Yeah, amen to that. So coming back to the man and the warrior's blueprint.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, men have hormones too. And I've just read actually an article that said that today's 20-year-old male have the same amount of testosterone as a 70-year-old
Mm,
man like a couple years ago. So I can imagine that that is going to play a massive role in your physical fitness and evolution and just like how you show up as a man, as a leader. And yeah, like how did you experience that and how can you like measure that and do you do something about it?
yeah. So I don't know the exact numbers. I think it was 7-year-olds from like the 1940s or something
Yeah.
like that. or
couple years
1950s,
ago.
60s. But I mean, yeah, it's so crazy. I don't really know how the testing was done or anything, but I wouldn't doubt it, just because I think a lot of that has to do with stuff they add into food and processed stuff we're eating and chemicals, all that stuff. I think that has a huge effect on it. But also, there's a ton of stress with a lot of guys. You know, if you're trying to provide for a family, things just got more expensive. So it's to make a certain amount of income to reach that. So I get that that's stressful. And if you have a family to provide for, it's even more stressful. So I understand now having a family, I understand the stress of that and just how to help men try to figure out how to handle those things and come up with strategies of how to handle that. That's where having faith does help a lot because things just tend not to lead to those peaks in high stress as much if you have the hope of the Lord. Of course, if am I guilty of having high stress moments and frustration? Yeah, I'm human. It's not like I'm perfect by any means, but having faith helps a lot. Yeah, so some of the stuff we look at, obviously, we're looking at testosterone, we're looking at cortisol, looking at estrogen, looking at sex hormone binding globulin, just different stress markers, different sleep markers, and just kind of things that indicate they're in a high level of stress, or maybe they're not getting enough sleep, or testosterone's low. Looking at vitamin D, vitamin B12, CBC with differential, just looking at red blood cells. Pretty much everything you can imagine that you want to look at in a male panel or female panel, we're going to look at. And so that just, again, helps us give a snapshot of where they're at right now, regardless of what their genetics say. We always want that snapshot. So we look at those things and we kind of build a plan from there. Like, hey, based on your blood work and genetics, this plan is going to be most optimal for you. And then it leads into, we have the medical staff behind us that helps with peptide therapy, hormone replacement therapy. So if someone's testosterone is really low, or there's a peptide that we think that would be helpful in assisting them, then, we send them to the medical staff and get them in communication with them so they can handle that portion of things. So I kind of, again, I want it to be a one-stop shop for all that stuff. So guys and gals don't have to go fish around and kind of cherry pick here and there, but they can have a place that it's people that care about them and want to see them live a longer and healthier life. They want to see them succeed. And so that's kind of what it's all about. But we just want to provide a place for people to accomplish all those things, understand what's going on with their body, have someone actually break down their blood work, break down the genetic testing instead of just sending the results and say, yep, you're fine. Actually going through marker by marker and saying, this is what this means. This looks good, or hey, we want to improve this. So as long as people just feel like they understand themselves, that's the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that is a crucial point because I see more and more patients, they have a feeling like something's off and they see their doctors and they get like the blood work done. And then they're like, yep, there you go. Here's the results. And then they're looking into the lab and they're like, I can't even read half of that, and what does that mean? And another thing is that I see more and more patients coming out with kind of normal results. So the doctor is just, yeah, it's in the range, you're fine, you're good. But they know that they're not, right? So I think it's even different to have like a normal and an optimal measurement, and to just talk about people with that and just explain actually what it means that's on the lab result. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting. But you said like you look into like 100 something genes.
Yeah. 100
I can
plus we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that is quite overwhelming. Is there like a few key things where you say, okay, like those are the most impactful,
Yeah.
or
That's great question. 'Cause that's exactly what we talked about. Where we look at, so out of the 170 genes, all 170 of them are having an impact on your health. Some of them you don't have that certain gene, so you don't need to
Mhm,
really worry about it. And that's like, there's a big chunk of them that'll be kind of in a light gray category
mhm,
that are like no impact. They're not really
yeah.
affecting you at all, or not affecting you at all. So, but then you have a low impact category, a medium, a high, and a very high impact. So obviously, we're going to spend most of our time in that very high and high category, and then kind of trickle our way down to the medium and low. But we always start with like our first phone call after we do genetic testing is about an hour long, and we're going through the very high and high categories of genes. Some are shorter than that because some people only have
Mhm,
4 or 5 genes in the very high and high category. Some people have like
mhm.
20. So it just depends on kind of what we're looking at. So Yeah, the very high impact category, we're going to spend most of our time there. We're going to look at supplementation for some of those genes. We're going to look at lifestyle changes, different disciplines we want to enact, whether it's, better nutrition, better workout routine, better sleep, better recovery, kind of just depends. So then we move to the high category, tackle that, make sure we have the very high one settled. They know what to do. Then we move to the high category, and then medium and low. But we spend the most of our time in the very high.
Okay, that sounds super complex, but super interesting. So is
Yeah,
it kind of,
it sounds really complex. They get like a 20-page thing that breaks it all down.
yeah.
Once I hop on a call with them and I create my own kind of 8-page breakdown
Hmm.
of their results with them that I make, that's a lot more digestible. So it sounds really complicated, but once we sit down and talk about it, it's like, oh, okay, that's not as overwhelming as I thought it was. So
Yeah. Okay. So, and you basically look at all the genes in their different, how they weight and if they're low impact and high impact, kind of like, like a symphony or a song. And however they're like working together is then what determines like my metabolism. So, what I should eat, how I should sleep, how my probably detoxification works. So, you draw all that results like for the
yep,
lifestyle factors out of it.
yeah, we can look at all that, and again, how certain genes interact with other genes, and
Hmm.
if this gene's present here and this gene's also present, then it's a higher chance that this is happening. Whatever it may be, whether it's detoxification or diabetes or
Hmm.
insulin sensitivity, or there's like 1,000 things that I could go down different
Yeah.
roads. But yeah, so we can kind of put two and two together from those and say, yeah, based on this is what we need to do. Yeah, which is again really helpful for people because it just kind of provides what you said earlier, provides a sense of relief of like, okay, so I'm not crazy that I feel this way. Nope,
Yeah.
matching up. Yep.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That's awesome. But maybe think about like, okay, we say elite men that want to have peak performance. There's probably no way around getting a genetic testing. But is there anything you've seen, like anything you can compare, or you say, okay, maybe if I'm not right now able to get a genetic testing or not yet, is there like early warning signs or something that you can give the man out there and say, okay, actually, if you notice this or that, that could be a good indicator that you may not at your optimal, and we should have a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously age plays a part in that too. As you age, things just tend to slow down a little bit. But let's say we're just
Um,
talking to 30 to 40 to 50-year olds. Yeah, then I would say biggest things are, I would say sleep is like the lowest hanging fruit of something that we can all use more
mhm,
of that has one of the greatest
yeah,
impacts on our health out of anything. And so I think a lot of guys miss out on that. Like, well, I'm going to grind and, only sleep 4 hours a night. And then they're surprised that they feel horrible and their workouts are horrible. And then they've gained, 10 pounds of fat around their midsection. They're like so confused. Like, well, let's just like fix your sleep hygiene. Let's try to go to bed at the same time every morning or every night. Wake up at the same time every morning. Try to get that 7 to 9 hours. I would even, more 8 to 9. I usually get about 6 to 7, but there's actually certain genes too that we actually don't look at these genes, but there are some genes that kind of look at some people genetically just don't need as much sleep as others. That's super, super rare. People will say that, but it's not super, super common. I usually get 6 hours, and I've done that for a long, long time, and I feel fine. Workouts are great, all that. I wake up feeling rested, recovered. You ask my wife, she needs like a full 9, 9 hours and to feel like her best. And I think that's just a difference between also, she's breastfeeding, all that stuff too. So she's expending a lot more energy, doing that. So I think there's a difference there between men and women. But yeah, I say again, sleep is the lowest hanging fruit. You can always get more sleep. As much as you're grinding or whatever you're doing, you have kids. I know it's hard with having kids. I understand that, having my own, but do what you can, get more sleep if you can. Obviously, that's easier one to accomplish. But then, yeah, so feeling really sluggish, sleeping, I feel like you slept a long time, you wake up still feeling tired. That's a signal that there's probably something off.
mhm,
I would say starting to just kind of, you're working out a lot and you just still feel like you're seeing some pudginess around the midsection, or feel like your face is getting puffier, or that could be a sign of some hormone, dysregulation. And then like really, really strong cravings for sweets and stuff like that. Everybody has those cravings, but really strong cravings a lot. It can indicate there might be some glucose and insulin dysregulation there as well. If you start to notice I mean, there's a lot of things. You start to notice, like clumps of hair falling out. That's more for women, I would say. If you notice like clumps of hair falling out, guys just tend to um, have a lot more, testosterone that converts to DHT. Hair falls out. Not every guy, but it's a little more common with men too. As they get to a certain age, they start losing their hair. Women,
Mhm.
though, if you start to notice some of that, then obviously there's probably some hormone stuff there. Yeah, I mean, you can even like skin. There's some skin stuff. Like you notice changes in your skin, and whether it's coloration or you're getting really clammy or really dry, there could be some hormone stuff there. Again, yeah, sorry, it's not super clear, but there's a lot of you just the biggest thing I tell people too. If you just don't feel normal and you haven't felt
Mhm.
normal, I would just get some blood work done and start there. Genetic testing is awesome. It's not the end all be all to live your healthiest life, though. I have people who just do blood work. I just think blood work is a necessity for anybody who really wants to understand themselves. Just get blood work done, get a full panel done, and just have someone walk you through the results and understand it. That's the best place to start for anybody, man or woman. So hopefully that answered your question. I was all over the place.
Yeah, no, I mean that's awesome, and you are right. Sleep is probably one of the easiest things to adjust. Depends on what phase of your life is, and thank God, the kids are getting older, and most of the things are just temporary. But when they're older, they annoy you with other stuff, so I'll keep you up at night. It's what they say: small kids, small problems; big kids, big problems. So
Yeah,
but it's all good. They're a blessing. So
yeah, they are. It's awesome.
yeah, when I get that. So we said we covered sleep. What about like physical exercise, like training? Like, is there something you say, okay, just like despise those like genetic variations, but actually, if you want to build your warrior blueprint type of physique, there are certain things I even see in genetic testing as recurring patterns is like, okay, that's actually something that seems to work for a lot of men. Of course, not all of them, but like the majority.
Yeah, so the genetic testing we look at when it comes to working out and physical exercise, it tells us more kind of, hey, you're going to respond really well to, high intensity training, endurance training, or like weightlifting. Doesn't mean that
Mhm.
someone who maybe doesn't have the genetic predisposition to respond really well, that isn't going to respond to that. And so that's kind of where it
Mhm.
goes into, people who like have a really hard guys who have a really hard time gaining muscle and gaining weight. And a lot of times it's like that could be a genetic thing where it's just like, yeah, you just like they don't have a huge frame. It's harder to pack on muscle. They're still going to respond to weightlifting well. They'll still be able to pack on muscle. It's not like that's impossible. But what happens is they're comparing themselves to pro bodybuilders who pack on a ton of muscle and they're using exogenous stuff. So it's hard with social media. Sometimes those guys have a skewed view of what it looks like to be responsive. But then, I have a pretty easy time gaining weight. I'm not a hard gainer. I don't need to eat 8,000 calories a day to gain weight or anything like that. There's pros and cons to that though, so then sometimes I gain a little more fat and then I have to cut it off, or cut it out. So again, everybody's going to respond, not everybody, there's some special cases there, but most people, if they're pursuing weightlifting, packing on muscle, they're eating the right way. For guys, if you're eating in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain muscle, you're going to gain some weight. And it's just the consistency of doing that. Some people happen faster than others. And then women, same thing. Again, hormones are very different for men and women. Um,
Thank
um,
God.
Depending on the cycle, what part of the cycle they're in, it also that plays a role.
I heard of that. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's
I
one of the
heard
things we
it.
look. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things we look at in women's panel, though, is we have to know what phase of their cycle they're in because
Hmm.
that determines whether certain things are high or low or if they're
Sure.
normal.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we do too. Blood work for women is like, okay, when was this? What part of your cycle do you think you're in? And just to make
Yeah.
that picture a little clearer. But yeah, in terms of physical exercise, I think everybody should be lifting weights regularly every week. And yeah, throwing in cardio. You don't need to be a marathon runner. You don't need to be like a Olympic sprinter or whatever. But doing some sort of cardiovascular stuff every week as well is really helpful. But I tend to emphasize weight training because one of the best predictors of longevity is muscle mass. Not saying bodybuilder level muscle mass, but having mass as you get older, the better off you are. Again, if you're having to take steroids to get huge muscles, that's different than just being someone
Yeah.
who's fit, healthy, like a 7-year-old who has, really toned legs or whatever and is really strong, they're more likely, if they fall, be able to catch themselves or brace themselves versus someone who doesn't work out and they fall. The risk of injury is way higher, and the risk of death is a lot higher too, because that gets infected, they go to the hospital, and yeah, it's just not a good situation to be in. So that's why muscle mass is a really great predictor for longevity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. And I've seen a lot of patients in university hospital that at an older age actually getting really in trouble because they were falling and they broke their hip or whatnot, and then they're hardly recovered from it. So actually weight training is super, super important to even have like bone density and that muscle mass to keep your posture upright, and you can even like bounce out like if you like stumble or fall like yeah, so that it's super crucial. It's I think in the younger years we're doing a lot of because of the physical appearance and it looks nice and stuff, but it really becomes a determinant for health and even quality of life if you are well built, because then you're able to run with your grandchildren even longer, right? Like, and you don't depend on assistance for longer, and that is linked with like depression in older people as well, when they have to see their abilities decline and they see actually I need assistance now for even opening a jar, and it must be so frustrating. So that's really important that you pinpoint that out, that it's actually not just being physically healthy now in my 20s, 30s, 40s, but really adding a lot of quality of life and health in the following
Yeah.
years to come. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we're probably not diving into nutrition because that's like it's like a lot, but maybe just like if you have like the genetic panel, like does it tell you how you metabolize the food? Like maybe even to the point that you can say, oh, actually, because your liver works that way, or your intestines have a hard time like absorbing vitamin D, which is like from in my case, for example, if
Mhm.
you know certain things, then you can go right with that and say, okay, that would be the best nutrition. But I assume you need to add actually this or that supplement because yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's exactly it looks like. So you and I chatted about the vitamin D thing before, obviously, and yes, one of the things we look at is your absorption of vitamin D, your absorption of certain nutrients, and so we can look at how your metabolism's functioning in that way in terms of absorption, but also how the liver is detoxifying things. And so there's obviously different supplements we can take to help promote that. So choline is a big one that has to do with
Hmm.
methylation, but also it's found in eggs. Helps with a lot of different processes within the body. Even helps with like vitamin D and all those things. So that's a big one that we uncover a lot for people. Is like, hey, they're like, well, I'm eating 3 eggs a day, and it's like, yeah, let's take a supplement though if you're really deficient in choline. And
Yeah,
so there's different things we can test in blood work for that. But and then
and that's
yeah,
just have egg whites.
yeah, and so it's actually the yolk in the eggs that has the choline in it. So I tell people eat like
Yeah.
whole eggs, and so yeah, so some people just need a supplement for certain things, and then again, that's why it's called a supplement. We're not trying to have that supplement take over for something. We're just having to add a little extra to what we're already getting, what we should
Yeah.
already be getting in a nutrition plan. So if you're not having any sort of choline throughout your diet and you're limiting yourself, then obviously supplement's going to be necessary, but you should
Hmm.
be having at least some of it from your diet, at least some
Yeah.
of it or all of it. Supplements should be always be supplements. They shouldn't be something that takes over for something else.
Yeah, what I really love and what I think is not emphasized enough, especially in the health and fitness community, you basically open up your Instagram or TikTok or whatnot. And if you're like into that community, like weightlifting or Pilates for the women or whatnot, then you're like flooded with advertisement, right? Like creatine gummies here, I don't know, all the greens here and this pre-workout and that. And then all of a sudden you have all those influencers advertising and like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm in the best shape because like I have this drink every minute, and then actually yeah, they display their whole bucket of supplements, and you look at like a full table of pills, and then comes the cool box with the peptides,
Yeah.
and then you're like, whoa, holy smokes, like that is probably another $1,000 I had to
Yeah.
invest. And then people just hop on it because they think like, oh yeah, if it's good for them and they look
Yeah.
a certain way and that's maybe what I'm aiming for, then they just shovel all that in as well. And I think it's not warned about enough. So I really like that you emphasize that it could even be more harmful. So to just like shovel it in blindly. This is another advantage of saying, hey, you'd rather take a couple $100 and do a great blood panel and do the genetic testing, and then what actually you need, and that it actually supports you, and you're not throwing a ton of money out the window, and maybe even to the extent that you harm yourself. And I mean, it's disgusting. Just had to swallow like 20 pills down.
Yeah. And that's the thing is the social media and influencers is like, yeah, take our products, but it's like they don't see the other work they've put in, all the years and years of going to the gym every day, eating the right way every day. So yeah, something that's can help, but it's not going to make you look like a influencer, like or who you follow, So it's not going to, it's a lot of times it can help, but you got to know why you're taking what you're taking. So
Yeah. Yeah, so I love that. That's really cool. Maybe one last thing I want to hop on, because that was like the field of my research for all the
mhm.
years, is what do you see, especially in high performing men that are under a lot of pressure? Like, where do you see kind of a line between like too much stress or a necessary like stimulus in order to reach your peak performance? Because stress, we know it's a evolutionary blessing, right? Like without stress or response, you and me wouldn't be able to sit here, all our ancestors wouldn't be able to survive. But it's like actually the whole nervous system regulation that plays a big role in yeah, how we recover from that and how we can utilize like the healthy stimulus in order to grow, because like the cell, everything like biology just like needs like the impulse and a little bit of stress to grow and evolve. But what do you see like in men, like where's like kind of like the line, or do you have like any observations?
Yeah, so it's hard because a lot of high performing men, they're built so differently. High performing anybody, no men or women, they're built a lot differently than like people who maybe aren't as not saying that people aren't high performing. I don't want to make it sound bad, but like people who are running billion-dollar companies or people who are professional athletes or whatever. Obviously, there's some genetics in there with professional athletes, but there is just a different mentality and a different like threshold for pain, and how much they can endure is just so vastly beyond what I think people realize when people like
Mhm.
high performing individuals. And I've had the chance to meet a few of them and talk to a few of them, and I always thought I was pretty high performing, but then I meet some guys who are like on a whole other level, and I'm like, wow, that's insane. I have a friend who I believe is a really really high performer, and their ability to outwork people is just beyond what I would ever imagine. Like there's just people who have that kind of resiliency to them. But what happens a lot though with those guys is they will sometimes reach a breaking point where it's so much stress for so long that their body kind of gives out on them, or they have a
Mhm.
health scare, or something happens. Not all the time, um, but the most high performing men that I've met typically take really good care of their bodies. So the ones who last the longest and can, reach the most success, when not always just financially or whatever, building the biggest business, but even in spiritual and emotional success, and really high performing spiritual people and high performing emotional intelligence and all that stuff. A lot of them are taking care of their body in every aspect. So not just the physical, but they're taking care of themselves spiritually, emotionally, taking care of their families. They're spending time with other people and investing in other people and serving other people. Those are the people that typically last the longest and have the most successful lives, not from a worldly standpoint of view, but from
Mhm.
what I think is successful. They've built amazing families. They have close relationships with their wives and kids, and they have a love for the Lord that is really desirable to me. And they've also stewarded the money and success that God's given them. They steward it really well to be generous and to give back. And that to me is true success. It's not, building the biggest company or having the most money. Obviously, I want those things to a certain extent to provide for my family and to serve them. And I think the Lord honors that, honors that desire, but he doesn't guarantee any of that. And so what I see with a lot of men who don't last very long as high performers, or who are considered so high performers, but then everything else in their life around them is collapsing, but their
Mhm.
business is amazing. Typically, there's not really a strong spiritual life there, and also, yeah, it's all consuming to them. Business and making money is all consuming. So everything else around them collapses, which to me is not successful. Even if they're successful financially, that to me is you've not reached success yet, if that's all that matters. So I know it's kind of, I'm talking a lot, but and so what I see is men that collapse sooner don't have those things. They only have the business and the money. The guys who last the longest and are the most successful in every area of their life have a strong relationship with the Lord, strong families, or if they're not married, they invest in the people around them and love the people around them, and they serve and give. Those are the people that I've seen become the most successful and high performing. But again, Paul says in the Bible, being physically fit is of some value. He doesn't say, hey, don't waste your time in the gym or exercising. He says, no, there is some value there, because being able to take care of yourself and be strong and be able to be ready not only for the Lord, but to protect your family or to protect your loved ones, there's a lot of value in that. And also, God's given us amazing bodies that do amazing things, and we're capable of so much. And I'd hate to be on earth and waste that for 90 years of just, drinking, eating whatever I want, whatever it may be. That just shows, hey, Lord, I don't really care enough about what you've given me to take care of it. And so to me, one of the easiest places to start sometime is why I meet with a lot of men who are non-believers. And sometimes the easiest place for them to start is just start working out with me, start
Hmm.
working out, I'll give you a workout plan or whatever. And sometimes that can lead them to that discipline, leads them to a now spiritual discipline. And so I think there's a lot of value in sometimes starting with the physical part of it. So
Yeah, I think so, because it's kind of like tangible and it's kind of like accepted.
yeah, you
And I
can see
really,
it there.
yeah, and I really like that approach, because that I witnessed myself. Oftentimes it's just by how you walk and talk and how you serve and how you be with other people, that you don't even have to, yell it out, oh, I'm a believer. It's just like that people, they getting curious, and that what happened to me, and they really start asking questions and like, okay, what's different, like you glow different, you just have that, what you said, you have that resiliency, you like all of a sudden have that peace around you. So what is that, like, and then it's like, then they work out with you or spend time with you, and then they ask questions, and then you can slowly introduce them and say like, hey, I'm a believer, and this, and to that point, I wasn't born a believer, I wasn't born into a Christian family, not at all.
Mhm.
So I can really say I searched the whole world up and down,
Yeah.
um, and was never satisfied. Like I was the best in class in school. I was on stage, everyone was applauding. I say like, "Hey, like, wow, you're so amazing." And I just stood there and I was just empty. I was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, okay, just pin it
Mhm.
on the wall."
Yep.
Then and like the same thing in sports, and they were all like, "Oh yeah, great." And then they were like, my family were like collecting all these newspaper articles back then, and they were like, my grandma always like showing me off, and I was like, yeah, okay, but I actually enjoyed my sports to that point, but it was just like, I don't know, I feel empty somewhat.
Yeah, no fulfillment.
And it was really like that, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe you just have to go to the next level of the
Mhm.
ladder, right? Maybe you just, wait until you have your bachelor's degree." Okay, nothing happened. "Oh, yeah, okay, wait until you have your master's degree," right? With, like, high honors. I'm like, "Okay." It's like, just a lot more paper on the wall,
Yeah.
but nothing was, like, in here, and I was like, I searched the world up and down. Of course, as a health scientist and researcher, you go into everything, every stress relief technique out there, every mindset program out there,
Yeah.
did it all, but I was just getting more miserable.
Yeah.
And then always at the end led for me to Jesus and to walking my way with him now, and given I was like, okay, I'll try it all. I tried it all my way. Nothing worked out. So here I am. Now you take over, right?
Yeah.
And and that was like just the best decision of my life. And and not truly can compare with like the peace and the love. And
Mm-hmm.
when you were like, especially I think like peak performers always have like kind of a childhood where they were like neglected or not seen. So they
Yeah.
have that ingrained feeling of, oh, if I just work harder, if I just
Yeah.
perform, they're going to love me, they're going to see me. And that was me too. But it was never enough. And it was never enough. And that's what I see with people, what you say, that just focus on the external validation, or say, I'll build that business, to pick up a Ferrari, and then when everyone sees that I made it, then
Yeah.
I finally feel fulfilled. And then they're all sitting there with their quick fixes, their women, their drugs, their alcohol, their whatnot, to
Mhm.
numb them, to numb the emptiness, and to numb the sin, which is actually nothing but like the separation from God, to fill that
Absolutely.
void, And so it is so profound what you do. And I think it's amazing that you combine both, because I think that is actually the key that brings people back to the flock,
Yeah.
and back to stewarding their body well. And that's not just what each individual needs, but what we as a society need, I think,
Yeah.
right now, especially men stepping up and leading us again. But in order to do that, they need to lead themselves
Absolutely.
first, and know what they have to do in order to be well and successful. And
Yeah. It's like Hebrews 12:11. Now no chastening or discipline seems pleasant for or seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it produces the peaceful fruit of righteousness, to those who have been trained by it. And I think that's something that every man should live by. That verse is Hebrews 12:11, because it's talking about discipline and doing hard things. It sucks in the moment really bad. Afterward, it will produce that peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. So those who train themselves to be disciplined and honor God, He's going to honor that and bless that. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have $1 million, but he will. There's a thousand other ways to be blessed,
yeah.
and also the blessings that we miss out on by not being obedient and following that. So I just think every guy, whether you're a Christian or not, you could take that verse and be like, yeah, that's really true. Discipline in the gym sucks when you're doing a really hard leg day. It hurts and it's painful, but the results after are awesome. You feel great. You're building muscle. You're stronger, and you get all these health benefits from it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and it builds a lot of self-confidence, actually, because confidence, being a mindset or a mental health specialist, I know that there's a lot of power in your brain, in your focus, in your mindset, even to the point that you can put on and off genes,
Yeah.
with your mindset. But at the other hand, and it is like with the Holy Trinity, it is mind, body, soul, right? And you have to exercise, like you have to walk the talk. Actually, you can't just rehearse it in your mind and wait for the perfect moment, but you have to rehearse it. You have to get clear on it, and then you have to walk that path, because only by walking and by doing things and achieving the next steps, this is where the confidence is built, right? And they know, like, I can do hard things. And I think that's probably even where that resiliency come from, you just talked about, with like the 1%ers or whatnot, because they did a lot of hard things, and they know, they have their faith and they have their confidence, and they know the Lord always walks beside me. But besides that, I can do hard things, and I can hard
Right.
things through Him. And I can look at my life and say, okay, wow, there were a couple really big valleys or tough mountains to move, but I did it. So, so what's next, and then I think that's the more you challenge yourself and the more you grow with that,
Yeah.
the more successful you become.
100%. I agree with that.
Absolutely. All right. So to wrap that up, I'll try to like repeat it. So what's like the framework for a warrior? Like, to first of all know your design, right? Know your genes, know your blood work, to
Mhm.
really know what your unique blueprint is.
Yeah.
And kind of like the blood work is measuring the signal. So probably when you work on things, you just take your, like, do you have like to repeat that genetic testing? No, it's probably like the baseline, and then like the blood work is kind of just like the measurement of progress?
Yeah, so genetic testing you don't need to repeat. Blood work we will
Yeah.
repeat.
Yeah.
But depending on how long I work with somebody, we may do blood work, 3 times. But typically, if I work with somebody for 6 months, which is my typical time, we'll do blood work twice, typically. Sometimes
Yeah.
we just, you know, sometimes we just do it once, but that is like almost never we do it once. We always do it twice just to make sure that, hey, we improved these things. If blood work come back looking perfect, then sometimes we recheck it, which I would say most of the time we still recheck it to make sure that, we're on the right track still. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works. But genetic testing is kind of a one and done kind of deal.
Yeah, okay, so that's the starting point. Then we have like the blood work as a measurement. Is there anything you add on top of it? I'm probably not stepping on the scale every other day, but I don't know. Do you say like this is like kind of like we do like in a medical exam, like okay, this is day one, this is how and where I feel off. So to just like note that down so they can, besides the blood work and like their, how much reps they do in the gym and progress like that, they can actually go back a couple weeks or months later and say, actually, like those parameters, like I'm not there anymore. I'm like that actually improved.
Yeah. So within the Spartic Health app that I have, we have a way to track nutrition, workout programs, and then we do check-ins once a week typically. But then we have daily check-ins that they fill out, and then we have habit trackers, so they can even put in their stress, sleep, all that stuff, and kind of gauge
Awesome.
that for themselves. Then we can look over the course of the 6 months and it's like, hey, your stress and sleep improved a lot. Or hey, you had a dip down here and then it improved, dip down here and improved. So why are we having those dips or those lulls in sleep and stress? And so we can uncover all that stuff. And that's why we want to track, making sure that we're tracking everything, because that really, really helps with making sure that we're giving them the best plan possible and make tweaks where we need to.
Okay, perfect. So genetic testing is the blueprint. Then we have the blood work and the measurements. And with that, you actually can fuel yourself with wisdom, train with purpose, and recover with faith. And to
Mm-hmm.
wrap that all up, we recommend people to pull out the Bible, maybe.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
there's something missing, if there's some like an emptiness, or you still tend to, cope with unhealthy things, maybe have a look in there. It's quite a nice book to
Yeah.
read. Okay, awesome. So everyone's out there now going crazy over working with you, I'll bet. So how can people find you?
Yeah, so Dr. Huebner on Huebner is Huebner. Looks like
Hey, we
Huebner, but
Germans don't have trouble with that because it's
yeah,
by the Americans made.
yeah. So Dr. Huebner on Instagram or at Spartic Health on Instagram as well. Those are two channels you can reach me on. I think my email and stuff is in there too. So if you have questions, you can email me.
Yeah, I can put all in the show notes.
Yeah. So there's the best place to find me is just on Instagram. I try to respond pretty quickly to messages. So yeah.
So you don't have to be a Colorado local. You do in part, like people can visit you at your
Yeah.
clinic
We,
if
we
they're
work in
local,
all
but
50 states.
you can work everywhere.
Yep. All 50 states, not so much with blood work and genetic testing outside of the US. I've had clients who are outside of the US where we do just more nutrition and workout stuff, but I can't order blood work from another country kind of thing. But everything else, yeah.
Okay, that is awesome. So I don't want to take more time of your
Very
busy
good.
day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
This is
Thank you
so
so
fun.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna put everything in the show notes, and thanks for that conversation. Looking forward to what comes out of it. You
Yeah, me
take
too.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.